to the gas station the next day and it's $2 a gallon. What do? Call in sick, can't come to work. Don't want my paycheck this week because gas is $2 a gallon. You see, the way an investor thinks is, I like it when it's 5% money, but if it's 8% money, do I stop investing? If I can borrow at 8% and earn 20, do I want to do that? How much 8% money do I want to borrow if I can get 20%? All of it, exactly. Okay, so let's take a look and see what the free duplex story looks like here. Now this isn't in your notebook, so you can try and track with me if you want to, or just watch and listen. Here's a house. Here's your standard 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 1,200 square foot, 45-year-old, galvanized plumbing. It's got the little shingles on the roof that look like tortilla chips, right? Okay. And it's on maybe a 3,500 square foot lot here in Silicon Valley. $500,000, a cool $500,000, right? See, nobody laughs here. Because they're like, yeah, so, right? There are places in the country where people can't even fathom that. All right. Now, let's say you've got a $250,000 mortgage sitting on that property, which means you have what? $250,000 of equity. Now, after coming to this presentation, you say to yourself, gee, I've got an awful lot of idle equity. I mean, I'm controlling this property at 2-to-1 leverage. That doesn't seem to be very effective. So what you decide to do is you decide to get rid of this crummy mortgage, and you go over here and you get a $300,000 mortgage. And that means you just reduced your equity by $50,000, which is now cash. So you get $200,000 of equity, but now you have cash. At 6% interest, what does it cost you to control that $50,000? Do you remember? $300. There you go. So over here, let's get your expense column going. You got $300. And that's principal and interest. Do you remember how much of it's principal? $50. Okay? So you've got this going out, and you've got $50 coming in amortization. Now, it isn't profit to you, but it also isn't loss because you're just moving it from one pocket to the next, right? So what have you got left? You got $250 a month going out of interest. What do we know about interest on your primary residence? It's tax deductible. So let's say that you're in you give up about 1/3 of your income in the tax bracket. I know some of you would have a party if that's as low as it was, right? But between state and fed, you give up about 1/3 of it. So what you do is you say, I'm going to get about an $80 tax credit here for the deductible interest. So now you're down $170. Okay? But for that $170, you're controlling $50,000. What might you do with that $50,000? You might go buy an income property. So let's say you go over to the other side of town, and in this case it's probably the way other side of town, and you've got a $250,000 little duplex here, and you put down $50,000, you get yourself a $200,000 loan. At 7.5% interest, you have no way of knowing this, but I'll tell you, it's $1,400 a month, principal and interest. And let's say you've got taxes of about $250 and insurance of about $50. At the end of the day, you got about $1,700 going out. But remember, when you buy income property, you buy and pay for two things, right? Income and property. And so now we've got the income coming in, and so you've got these happy little tenants here that are happily living in your place and happily paying you $850 a month each. And so you bring that $1,700 down here, and it offsets your expense, and even though you didn't make money, you didn't lose money, and that's the way we make money in real estate. Number one is cash flow. All right, so now for $170 a month, you own this duplex. Second way we make money in investment real estate is the amortization. So out of this $1,400 a month that we have here, we've got $150 a month that is paying down your debt. Whose money is being paid with? The tenants. Is that profit to you? Say yes, because that's the answer. So over here you've got $150 of amortization. So now you got minus 20 on your expense column, and we've just taken advantage of amortization. Third way we make money in investment real estate is depreciation. This is where it gets a little sticky, okay, so stick with me. You've got the house, the duplex over here, and you've got the lot. Let's say the lot is valued at 20% of the property, and this is 80%. So what you do is you get to take 80% of the purchase price, or 80% of $250,000, which in this case is $200,000, and that becomes your depreciable basis. And the depreciation schedule, if you don't know, is 27.5 years straight line. What does that mean? Who knows? 27 and a half years. It means that you get to take the $200,000 and every year deduct 1/27th and a half of it until you're done. Okay? So what you do is you divide it by 27 and a half and you get $7,272 a year. Why? Because I do this all the time. Okay? So you've got $7,272 of loss, non-cash expense. And then you divide that by 12 and you find out that you're losing $606 a month on paper, and the government will give you a tax credit that's worth roughly whatever your tax bracket is. Let's say it's a third, so it's a couple $100, you get another tax credit over here. So now you're plus 180. So how much is this duplex costing you? So far it's looking pretty good, right? See? Now if you can imagine going down to Charles Schwab and they want to give you, you want to get a retirement account, and they tell you that, you say, well, Chuck, I'd like to set up this retirement account. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put I'm going to actually open the account, and then you pay me $180 every month. And at the end of the month, at the end of the year, I want $12,500 of capital gain on top of my 180. Do you think they have accounts like that at Charles Schwab? No, Charles Schwab doesn't sell real estate. They sell stocks. But it's coming back. All right. Okay, so that's depreciation. But what's the big way we make money? Remember the big appreciation? Here it is. If this $250,000 property goes up 5%, what is that? Do you remember? Come on. $12,500, yeah? There's your capital gain, $12,500. All right, now if you let that go for 10 years, you've got $125,000 of what we call new equity. And new equity is the best kind of equity. It's a lot better than equity you create, right? It's better when the market gives it to you. So you got $125,000 of new equity. Now, do you think your rents have gone up in 10 years? Sure. So let's say your rents have gone up from $850 a side to $1,200 a side, which is a difference of $350 times two sides is $700. Now you get $700 a month of positive cash flow. And so you say, well, I'm going to take that positive cash flow. If you take it, then you have to deduct it by your tax rate. Let's say you're making more money now and it's 40%. Now you're down to $420 a month that you could take. So that's a way to do it. But what if instead of doing that, you took that $700 a month and you went over here and you got yourself a brand new $100,000 mortgage? Because remember the power of cash flow? See, the bank at 7.5% interest on a 30-year amortized loan will give you $100,000 of what? Cash. Do you have to pay tax on that? No. Does it spend just as good as positive cash flow? Yes. Is it better to get $100,000 today or $700 a month for the next 30 years? I'd rather have the $100,000 today, right? And so you could spend that, or you could go do this again times 2. And so you start with 1, and then you have 2, and then you have 4, and then you have 8. And later on today we'll show you what that really works at by the numbers, because we'll show you how to take $500 a month and turned it into $12 million in just 20 years. Thank you very much.
Everyone's reason for investing is different, and no two investors have exactly the same needs. In this segment, Robert outlines the importance of developing your own personal investment philosophy.
What I'm going to do now is talk about what I think is one of the most important parts of your real estate investment future, and that is your personal investment philosophy. See, each person in this room wants real estate to do something for them, and it's probably not the same as the person sitting next to you. Real estate is not the end. How many of you wanted to invest in real estate because you wanted to intimately get involved with the lives of your tenants? No, that's not the reason, right? How many of you wanted to invest in real estate because you love the smell, taste, and feel of dirt? No, that's not it. How many of you want to invest in real estate so you can clean human hair out of toilets? That's not why we choose to invest in real estate, right? We choose to invest in real estate for the lifestyle it can provide, and what it provides for you is different depending on what you're trying to achieve. So we're going to spend some time this afternoon talking about your personal investment philosophy. Yours. Now, the question people ask a lot of times is, what do I invest in? right? There's all kinds of real estate. What should I invest in? There's all kinds of things you can invest in. You can invest in fixer-upper properties, buy and hold properties. You can invest in foreclosures. You can invest in tax lien certificates. You can invest in development, subdividing, that kind of stuff, assignable contracts, lease options. There are all kinds of things available in real estate. And the more you learn about real estate, the more you know the kinds of things that are available. And so the question is, with all these things going on, what should you invest in? What makes sense for you? And the answer for everybody is different. What you decide to invest in might not work for the person next to you. And what they decide to invest in might work okay right now, but it might not work forever. So there's a more important question than what, and that is how, what's best. What's best for you? And the answer is, what's the answer? Yeah, it is the answer. It depends. It depends. What does it depend on? Depends on you and your family's goals and your ability and the skills that you have. For instance, we get people that come in and they go, I don't really have any money, but they have skills. They know how to paint or do carpentry or those kind of things. I mean, I'm not positive which end of the hammer to use, so I'm probably not the guy you want doing a lot of your repair work. But there are people that are really good at that. So the answer is it depends. And it shouldn't be a bologna sandwich for everybody. That's one of the problems I have with the guys that sell the books and tapes, is that what they're about, it's not the books and tapes, right? We'll have books and tapes for sale. We have people that speak. Obviously, Jeff has books and tapes for sale. The thing is this, it's when I am not concerned with what you're looking for, and all I do is come up with what I'm wanting to sell you, meaning prescription without diagnosis is malpractice. Prescription without diagnosis is malpractice. If you ask me, what should I invest in, I have to ask you some questions to find out what you're trying to accomplish before I could ever make a recommendation. And a lot of these gurus don't. They say, oh, all the answers are there in my books and tapes, and just $49.99 a month, you know, whatever. And that's not in your best interest. So it shouldn't be the same answer for everybody's question. It's like when the only tool you have is a hammer, you see every problem as a nail. All right, so when we talk about personal investment philosophy, what we're talking about is how you take what you're trying to accomplish and be able to write that down in such a way that you can understand it and that you can hopefully say it. So every investor has different goals. What you're trying to accomplish is different. We told you prescription without diagnosis is malpractice, and yet people do it all the time. And then one of Russ's sayings, when you have clarity of vision, strategy and tactics become self-evident. When you have clarity of vision, your strategy and tactics become self-evident. As Jim Rohn says, when the why becomes big enough, the how becomes obvious. So let's talk about personal investment philosophy. If you don't know where you're headed, any road will get you there. So how do we decide where we're headed? A lot of people don't know. They're not sure what's right. So you're seeking and you're out looking and you're trying to understand as much as you can about different options so you can see which things to you. We talked about all kinds of different things you can do to invest. Well, if you go to a seminar and you hear a whole bunch of ideas and you're listening along going, hey, this sounds like a pretty good idea, then there's a good chance that your self-talk is something you should pay attention to, and that's probably a good idea for you. If you went to a seminar and you know someone's trying to teach you something in real estate, and you're like, I don't think that'll work for me, then guess what? It probably won't work for you. And it's not like you have to do everything. You can get incredibly wealthy and take care of your family by doing just one thing and doing it very well. All right, so what I want to talk about next is focusing, because this is what's crucially important. What average people do and mediocre people do is they diversify. Who preaches diversification? Stockbrokers, right? Do they have an agenda? Oh, yes, they do. But they preach diversification. Here's what diversification is a recipe for: mediocrity. When you diversify, put some here, a little there, some there, a little bit there, a little bit there, a little over here, you are ensuring a very average return. What wealthy people do is they focus, they laser crystal clear focus on one or two things, and they do them very, very well, and they repeat them, and they repeat success. That's a huge distinction. So, as we say, specialists always do better than generalists and get rich in a niche. You want to pick what it is that you want to do, what speaks to you. If you're one of those people that has those skills to do some fix-up and so forth, then maybe doing those kinds of properties works for you. If that's not you, if you're busy with your job and busy with your life and you just, you've got some money to do something with, but you don't want to have to handle it all, then maybe a pooled investment where someone else does the work is a better choice for you. You decide what is best for your personal investment philosophy. And again, everybody's different. So let's talk about Robert's Real Estate Continuums. You have a page in your workbook that talks about your personal investment philosophy, and you'll see a bunch of continuums there. And this is the way that I like to visually represent where you are when it comes to your personal investment philosophy. So we'll talk about each one of these, and what I want you to do today is make some notes on the paper. I want you to visually write down where your current mindset is in terms of these continuums. So we're going to leave the top one, income versus growth of equity, for last, your primary objective. I'll do that one last. But let's move to number 2 and say risk tolerance. What is your risk tolerance? Somewhere on the continuum of really, really, really conservative to really, really, really aggressive is where you find yourself. And just through where your mind tells you to put a mark, just put a mark where you are. If you're a conservative person, no, nothing wrong with that. Can you do nothing but 30% down single-family houses in very conservative marketplaces with fixed-rate mortgages and do just fine over the next 20 years? Yes. Oh, yes, you can. On the other hand, can you be crazy, wild, aggressive, borrow money from everywhere, just take this one to do that one, put it on my credit card and go hog wild and do very well? Yes, you can. Absolutely. But this is about where you feel. If you find yourself looking at a real estate deal and your mindset is just, or your self-talk is, there's just too much risk here, then guess what? It probably is. You should heed that and don't go ahead with the investment. Here's a great saying. No investment is too good to pass on. No investment is too good to pass on. Brian Tracy says opportunities are like buses. Another one is always coming along. So don't get all caught up in I've got to get it now if it doesn't smell right. And guys, as sexist as this may sound, women know this. There's something about them. They have this intuition thing, and I don't know what it is or why, but generally they're right. A guy goes, it seems good to me, and she says, it just doesn't seem right. She probably is right, so I don't know why that is, but it is. All right, so you need to decide where you are. Are you conservative or are you aggressive? Next is types of properties. On one end, we have single-family houses, right? Single-family houses. Then they're in multi-gigantic 2,000, unit complexes and commercial buildings. So where are you in that? What is the perfect project for you? Single-family houses, compared to almost all other investments, perform the worst. They perform the worst, but here's what I like about single-family houses. Very liquid. Easy to sell. Who's a market? Who's going to buy a single-family house I have for sale? Anybody. An investor could, or someone could live in it, or it could be somebody that needs it for a relative. They're very liquid. They're very easy to move. And what is the one thing that sells any piece of real estate? Price. Price will sell any piece of real estate. If you have a piece of property for sale, and in your marketplace, let's say the average days of the market is 45 days. If your property's been on the market for 50 days, guess what about your price? It's too high. You don't want to hear that, but that's the truth. Now, if the average days of the market is 45 and you sell your property in 2 days, how is your price? Just right. Probably just right. On the MLS, the multiple listing service is a tool that real estate agents use to exhibit property to prospective purchasers through other real estate agents. It is probably the single best marketing tool ever created. It matches up buyers and sellers so well that it is almost impossible to underprice a house on the MLS. Almost impossible, because what happens if you underprice it, here come all the offers, and the market drives it up. It is quite possible to overprice a house on the MLS. Now, talking about MLS, I love the MLS as a tool if you're selling real estate. If you're buying real estate, though, sometimes it's a great tool, but generally the properties on the MLS are the ones that have been driven to market value, right? Because it's a good system. So most of the properties that we deal with, over 80% of the properties that we deal with, never hit the MLS when we're talking about buying. On the selling side, it's a great tool. Now, the other thing about the multiple listing service is that it is a great opportunity for you to learn a lot about real estate. So you want to make sure that your real estate agent has access to that information. But it's like people look in the paper. If you limit what you look for in terms of properties to what's in the newspaper, as a real estate agent, guess what I advertise in the newspaper? The ones that aren't selling. That's what I advertise. When I have a seller and it's just overpriced and it's just a junky property and I can't get, well, I better advertise it. The really good deals, do I have to put ads in the paper for the really good deals? I don't. So the good deals don't show up in the newspaper, they don't show up on the MLS, so you've got to look other places. So you need to decide where are you. Now, I think that because we talked earlier about loans, there's a difference between 1 and 4 unit loans and 5 and above. A nice sweet spot for me is fourplexes. I like fourplexes because you get the economies of scale of having a few more units, and my single family house might be 100% vacant. My fourplex is rarely 100% vacant. It may be 25, in the worst case scenario, 50% vacant, but I have some rent coming in most of the time. So I like fourplexes, but you need to decide for you. Duplexes are great because you can get them for free, and that's a good price. But the thing about duplexes, you can typically get them with 10% down if you have good credit, where fourplexes are harder to get. Not impossible, but harder to get with 10% down. You probably need 20% down. So again, you need to decide what is the kind of property that you want to do well with. Okay, next is your duration of investment. Duration of investment. Are you a long-term buy and hold investor, or are you a short-term flip-around investor? And I want you to write down which is true for you right now. If you have the philosophy which is, I want to do some flips to get some money to be a long-term investor, then right now, you're a short-term investor. Here's the problem with short-term investing. Short-term investing doesn't get you out of the rat race. Short-term investing, turning properties for profit, still has you working in that business to create the income. Whereas eventually long-term buy and hold properties is what allows you to have passive income, which means you're doing whatever you want to do and the rent just keeps on coming. So that is the dream of getting out of the rat race, right? Having all this income that just is generated from your properties. Short-term philosophy doesn't do that, but it leads to sometimes long-term. So where are you right now? Go ahead and write down where you are on the short-term to long-term philosophy, your duration of average investment. All right, so next is property profile. On the left end, we have the lower end of the marketplace. These are the neighborhoods where you probably wouldn't want to spend too much time, right? And the far end is, the properties where you have to go collect the rent with a gun. I don't like those. My personal preference is, I'll take a knife, right? Because down there, now that's not for everybody. Some of you don't like the low end. I understand that. On the top end of the scale, we have pride of ownership. P-O-O. I love the acronym for pride of ownership. We have poo on one side and poo-poo on the other side. Okay, that's how the continuum works. But you need to decide. Pride of ownership are beautiful properties. You drive by, go, there's my property. Isn't it beautiful? It's so beautiful. Wow, what a great property. What's the problem with pride of ownership properties? They don't cash flow very well. You got to put a whole bunch of money down. They're nice, they look great, they will appreciate, but they don't cash flow. On the lower end, they cash flow, but the problem is the cash comes in like 20s, right? Because now there is the advantage that drug dealers do pay in cash, so that's one thing about that. But and I'm only partly kidding, right? I mean, so you want to be careful. You want to be in neighborhoods that you will gain investment knowledge from, not necessarily neighborhoods that you will personally live in. What you'll invest in is totally separate from what you'll live in. Can we all agree on that? You might go, well, I would never live here. Well, then don't. Most of my rentals I would not live in either. Here's another little rule for you. Don't fall in love with the property. You have my permission to fall in love with the house you live in. You can fall in love with that one. But do not fall in love with an investment property. About 2 years ago, we started our searching in Sacramento, and we came across a property that I just absolutely loved. It was so beautiful. It was this unbelievable Victorian property, 3 stories, 5 units. The rents ranged from $1,600 to $2,200 in Sacramento. It was breathtaking. I wanted this property so bad. We pulled up, I was like, oh, we have to have it. And of course, in hindsight, 2 years ago, what should I have done? Bought it, duh. But we didn't, because I learned, even though I was in love with it, I didn't have to, buy the property. The problem with a property like that is what happens when the guy paying $2,200 a month in Sacramento moves out? There's nobody else to rent that unit, right? So when you're at the very top of the marketplace, I like the lower end of the marketplace because when times are good, people always move into those rental units. When times are bad, people downsize into those rental units, right? There's more renters at the bottom of the pyramid, right? So I like that lower end. But you need to decide what's right for you when it comes to pride of ownership. How nice does the property have to be? Understanding that the further I go up to pride of ownership, probably the more I give up in cash flow. All right. Now, next is management preference. Do you want to personally manage your properties, or do you want to hire someone to do it? And that's something you have to decide. I think if you're new in this game, it's not such a bad idea to self-manage so you learn the game you're in. If you'll manage your own properties for the first year or two, you will pretty much get the game pretty clearly, won't you? You rented a few units, you've done some evictions even, that kind of stuff, right? Stephanie, who's not here today, Stephanie bought her first property when she was 19 years old, and in her second month she had an eviction. And I went right on. That was a great lesson for her because it was scary and it was expensive and all that stuff, but guess what? She had a second eviction. She no big deal, another eviction. Now, maybe she'll never have another eviction, but if she does, she's prepared to handle it because she's had the experience. So, where are you on that continuum? Charlie says, life is too short to manage property. You should hire somebody to do it, right? Someone else can do it. I know how to change the oil in my car, and I will never do it again. Because somebody else can do it better, faster, cheaper than me, and I don't like greasing my fingernails, right? But so I could do that, but I choose not to. And so you might decide that as part of your philosophy, you want to outsource management. If you do, understand it comes with a cost. What does management cost? Depends, anywhere from 6 to 12%. Right here in the Bay Area, 7 to 10% is probably what it costs of your monthly collectible income, and maybe a fee when they rent it up. But do the research, check out some managers. I was reading an article by a guy who was basically saying there's no such thing as an ethical property manager. That's an interesting, way to go. But I haven't found that to be true. If you look, now there are some property managers that, would sell you their mother. I found this great cartoon on the internet. It had the guy selling the mother. He goes, listen, I'm only selling you my mother because you really need her. All right, so, and then neighborhood. This is an important one, your investment proximity. Do you want to have the 20-minute rule like Charlie's dad does? I want to be within 20 minutes. I want to be able to go touch the properties. Or would you be willing to open that up? We've always had a rule which has been if I can get there in the day and back, I'll do it. Before, we only invested in Northern California. Today, that's not my rule. Today, I live where I want to live and invest where the numbers make sense. So Ron and I have properties in lots of different states. And really, how far away is Las Vegas? It's an hour on a plane, an hour and 15 minutes. Right? By the time you check in and check out, it's a couple hours, but it's just like driving to Sacramento. It's no longer for me to drive to Sacramento from San Jose for the day than it is to fly to Las Vegas. It's the same. Now, the laws are different, and you need to understand that when you look at owning in other states, and here's why. Some states are mortgage states, some states are deed of trust states, some states have judicial foreclosure, some states are anti-deficiency states, some states are not. If you don't know what I'm saying right now, then you probably want to do some research on that or come to some of our other programs where you'll learn what that means, but it's different in every place that you go. Because we're in different states, one of the first things we usually do is meet with a local apartment association so we can get some of those questions answered, and also find an A1 real estate agent to work with who really knows investment property so they can give us guidance on some of those kinds of things. But what is good proximity for you? Right now, I have property personally in 2 countries. But my friend Dolph DeRoos owns property in a whole bunch of countries. You know what he says to me? He says, Robert, why would you have all your property tied to one nation's economy? Well, now, for a lot of us, we think owning outside of the United States is risky, right? That might be too much risk. Well, people coming on our Investor Summit are going to go learn about real estate in another country in January. And it's like, well, okay, well, that might be something I want to learn about, but I might not be ready to go buy something there yet, right? One of our mentoring club facilitators, Jan, has properties in, I think, 5 different countries that he owns. So guess what we do? We hang around Jan and try to learn from him. And he's a great resource because he's been through all of that. He's got dozens of properties. And so you need to decide for yourself what your comfort level is. If you're just like the hair on the back of your neck is sticking up when I'm talking about other countries, then that's probably not where you want to start, all right? Tell you a quick story. We were in Cabo San Lucas about 12 years ago. At that time, you could buy a condominium right on the water. You could buy a condominium, and if it rented 40% of the time, it would be totally paid off in 5 years. Because of the huge disparity between what Americans would pay to stay for the night and what the land values were. But a lot of people are scared to invest in Mexico, right? Anybody kind of hesitant about investing in Mexico? Right? You might be, right? So we went and we did a field trip there, and we had one of the local real estate agents there, and people were saying, well, you know, we're kind of concerned about investing in real estate. He goes, I know what you mean. People have been having that same concern for the last 21 years as I've been here selling real estate. He's been selling real estate for 21 years in Mexico, doing just fine, thank you very much. But if you're just thinking about it, it might be outside your comfort zone. So you need to decide, and don't let someone talk you in or out of something that's outside of your comfort zone to start with. Eventually, you're going to push it a little more, a little more, a little more. All right, let's come back and talk about the top one, and that is primary objective, income or equity. Which do you think we prefer? Because it happens. Yeah, equity happens. But understand that it is up to you to decide cash flow or equity. When you come in for a consultation, you fill out a pre-consultation profile and asks, are you an equity investor? Are you an income investor? Do you want both? Most people go, yeah, that sounds good. I want both, right? Or are you investing short-term? What are you investing for? So we get an idea of what you're looking to do so we can give you a little prescription, right? Do a little diagnosis, give a little prescription. And not everybody thinks the same about this. For instance, there's the old adage of, well, I can't own too many negative cash flow properties. Right? If I have a cash flow property that's $50 a month negative, how many of those can I have? Well, not too many before it impacts my monthly income. Whereas if you had a $50 a month positive cash flow property, how many of those could you have? All of them, unlimited, right? You can get as many single-family houses as you want, right? Wrong. You can't. Do you know there's a limit to the number of single-family loans you can get? What's that number? Anybody know? Nobody knows for sure. But it's about 10, 6 to 10, depending on the lenders. After you have that, they're not going to make you any more loans. Now, maybe you can get owner carryback financing or maybe private financing, but it gets harder and harder. So what happens after you own 10 single-family houses? You start to go to 5 units and above in commercial property because you can get those loans still. But you need to decide what's right for you. So let's talk about cash flow versus equity. Cash flow investors are looking for that monthly payment. Now, Russ showed you earlier that when you take that cash flow, the example of the free duplex 10 years later, $700 a month positive. If I take that $700 a month positive, I pay taxes on it. But more importantly to me, those dollars are no longer working for me. Every dollar you take in cash flow, you no longer have leveraged into an appreciating asset. So my philosophy is for most of you, we get people that come in and go, I need cash flow, I need cash flow. And we get talking to them and find that they're in their 30s or 40s, they've got a great job, they've got plenty of savings. They don't need cash flow. They don't need cash flow at all. What they need is to acquire an asset base that's going to go up in value. And so most of you probably, if you're in this area, this is a nice affluent area of the country, you don't really need cash flow. And I'm going to show you, by way of an example, the true difference between cash flow and equity. Let me give you a quick example. We've talked about Paul and his duplex in Sacramento. When Paul bought the first duplex in Sacramento, $105,000, it appraised 16 months later for $240,000. Is that a good deal? Yeah, awesome. That's why he can afford to do sound for us. Paul fits the rule. He earns more from his investment property than he does doing his job. Yeah, isn't that great? He does. Now here was his choice. He could have bought that duplex with 20% down and had positive cash flow, $100 a month. So at the end of the 16 months, he'd had the $135,000 in appreciation plus $1,200 in cash flow. Pretty good. That's not what Paul did, though. Paul was a little more aggressive than that. Paul chose to buy 2 duplexes for 10% down. He bought one for $105,000, 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom. The other one he bought was $175,000. I think guy said $150,000. It was $175,000. I know because I sold it to him. And it was 3 bedrooms, 1.5 bath on each side, bigger property, nicer area. That property he recently refinanced, and it appraised at $417,000. So Paul's a guy with a lot of equity. Now what's Paul doing? Spending the money? No, he won't even buy me a beer. No, instead what Paul does, Paul is leveraging that into other real estate investments because it's worked really well for him. Now the point is this, with 2 properties, 10% down, guess what Paul had? Negative cash flow. See, he was leveraged too much. You have negative cash flow, a couple $100 a month. And 18 months in, $200 a month negative cash flow is how much? $3,600 negative cash flow. Negative cash flow bad, right? Bad. Negative cash flow. $3,600 a month negative cash flow, but what did he have in appreciation? He had $135 from the first one, and then the one that he bought for $175 went to $417. How much is that? A lot. Which is better, cash flow or equity? See, by buying 2 properties, he made the decision that I want to control more land, I want to control more real estate, I want to have more properties, because the more property I have, the better I will do in terms of future growth. Now, some of you in the room really are at a point in your life where you do need cash flow. You need money to come in every month, and it's okay. I don't want to beat up cash flow so bad that you go, well, if it has any cash flow, it's a lousy deal. No, because here's what's going to happen. If you focus on equity, and what you're after is acquiring as much property as you possibly can, here's what will happen to you. You will have so much cash flow, you won't know what to do with it. Now, it sounds hard to believe right now, but it's true. If you'll not focus on cash flow, it's like in real estate. As soon as we quit focusing on commissions, we made more money than we can spend. So, well, we're pretty good at spending it, but real estate agents that are all worried about what they're going to make are the wrong real estate agents. I teach real estate agents to get to a point where they're financially independent because it makes them a better realtor. See, if I don't need your house to close escrow for me to make my mortgage payment, I'm going to do what's right for you as a client, not what's right for me as the commission earner. Follow me on that? So same thing when it comes to your investment property. You don't want to have to compromise who you are as a person because of an investment decision. So you need to decide, are you a cash flow investor? Do you really need to have cash flow coming in every month? Or if you'll defer gratification, which is really hard for Americans to do, but if you defer gratification and let your asset base grow, you'll see what's going to happen. In fact, we're going to show you that in just a minute when Russ does his optimization model. Last thing I want to talk about is at the bottom it says, what's your overall investment strategy? That's where I want you to take what you just did, where you just wrote down on the continuum, and write that, put that into words so you can let us know, or let yourself know, this is for your own, you're not turning these in, for your own accord, what it is, what kind of investment philosophy you have right now. Now, if you don't know how to put that into words, it's simple. You go, well, I am pretty much an income investor who is very conservative. I like single-family houses. I want to buy and hold them. I like private ownership neighborhoods. I think professional management makes sense, and I'm willing to go anywhere inside of the 95112 zip code. That could be an investment philosophy. Now, we're starting to get down to strategy and tactics. What am I going to do? Which vehicle am I going to pick? But before you know that, you have to know what your philosophy is so you know when it's a good deal. A deal comes across my desk, I know whether it's a good deal for me because I know my philosophy. The same's true for you. If you don't have a defined, clear investment philosophy, then any deal seems like a good deal. And that's the recipe for mediocrity. So that's your personal investment philosophy. This is just the very start of it. What we do is every year we go through this, and at the beginning of the year, Mentoring Club, we do a new personal investment philosophy, and it's amazing how much they change. How many in the room who have been around our program for a while have had your personal investment philosophy, by round of applause, change radically since you started? That's what happened. Me too, right? I was a buy and hold investor. Buy and hold California only. That's the investor I was. until I started to get around people that thought differently. I remember I was at a cocktail party, and because I like those, and I was talking to a guy, and he didn't own anything inside California, and I didn't own anything outside of California. So I could have chose to go, well, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about, but that's not what I did. I said, this is a guy I got to talk to, right? You don't own anything in California? This is the state of appreciation. He's like, well, listen, tenant landlord law, and all these other states have better numbers. I'm like, well, but California's like where everyone wants to be. He's like, well, listen. So we had a wonderful debate, and it changed my philosophy a little bit. Changed his philosophy a little bit too, right? So that's how it works. You got to get into that. So to talk about what we're going to do to create wealth in your future generations, because you know what? There's going to be wealth in your family. If you stick around this plan, there's going to be wealth in your family. But in the future, it can be just astronomical. I would like for you, for those of you that have kids or grandkids, I would like your kids and grandkids, I would like baby Buchholz to be able to go to the college that makes sense based on curriculum and what he wants to study, and not based on tuition price. Follow me there? See, it's not about money. I have a very difficult, I was sharing this earlier with some people, I have a very difficult time in real estate investment because I'm not money motivated. And some of you are, and that's a good thing. Because really, it is a problem when you're not money motivated because you just like, that doesn't do it for me. Numbers are interesting, but that doesn't do it for me. But what you can do is get excited about whatever the cause is. For me, it's just watching the lights come on. When I see families change their financial fortune for generations to come, that just rocks. When I was selling real estate, you know, helping a family into the home for the first time buyers were just where my heart was. People made fun of me because I was doing these little transactions, right? What are you selling those little first-time buyer houses for? It's like I'm not selling houses, I'm helping first-time buyers. See the difference? Right? The two guys are working on a construction project, and the guy comes up and says, what are you doing? And one guy goes, can't you see I'm moving these logs and hammering these boards in the ground? And the other guy says, I'm part of a team that's building a cathedral. See the difference in perspective? And perspective is what makes real estate work. It's not about the return or the deal. It's about what you do with what you can. So what I'd like to do right now is we're going to get Russ Gray back on stage. Russ, we come out here and just talk about some of the next steps we can do. We know that we're nearing the end of our day. Once again, thanks for being here today. This has been just great to have you guys here all day. Give yourselves a hand. And we just like to finish up with some of the next steps. Where do you go from here? This was designed to give you an overview of real estate. Did we do that today? Excellent. Right on. Thank you. But as Russ said, this should not be the end of your real estate education. It should be either the continuation or the beginning of your real estate education, and there's lots to go from here. So give us just a couple minutes. What we're going to do tonight is that we're going to end the seminar pretty much right on time, and then we're going to take about a 10-minute break. And for anyone who's interested in our investor development program, that is how we help people to create wealth through real estate via the mentoring clubs, the educational series, our property showcases, pooled investments, that kind of stuff. If you're interested in that, you're welcome to stay for about 25 minutes, and we'll go through the program. You're not required to do that. Many of you are already in the program. You can stay if you want to. You can leave if you want to. If you're new, if this is the first time you've seen us and you're intrigued, there's a couple things I want to talk about. The first is that we have this saying that I like, which is time will either promote you or expose you. If this is the first time you've seen us, you know what? You might be a little skeptical. Who are all these fast-talking white guys in ties, right? I mean, really, you might be going, I don't know. They don't even sell books and tapes. Something's wrong with these guys. But time will either promote us or expose us. There's two possibilities. One is we're a bunch of fast-talking hypesters that are after your credit card numbers. Or two is, we really do care about the future of your family. We want to show you how we can create wealth together. And you get to decide which one of those is. You don't have to decide today. You can just keep coming to the seminars and decide whether or not you think we're the real deal or if we're just smoke and mirrors. And that's up to you to decide. We have hundreds and hundreds of people that have decided we're the real deal and are hanging out with some mentoring club. So we want to talk about some of the next steps.
This is my one last thing. This is my little soapbox because to me, I was one of these guys that went to seminar after seminar after seminar after seminar. I'd buy the books and tapes. I'd run to the back of the room. And I was always disappointed because at the end of the day, it was never really about me getting property. And so I think if you hang out for the program afterwards, we'll describe how that really works and how our people are really getting involved in properties, which is, you know, what most of you, I hope, came to do. But the biggest thing as we sit with people in their consultations is we try to help them get to ready, willing, and able to take action. Most of you, I would venture a guess, are financially able to buy real estate. Most of you are ready because you're here and you're interested. You gave up 8 hours of your day to come learn. It's the willing part where people get hung up. And the willing part really is part of beliefs. It's really believing it can happen to you. You know, when we stick my 18-year-old daughter up here and say she just closed escrow on a fourplex, or You know, we talk about what Ron's accomplished in his life at such a young age, or, you know, what Bob has done in decades and decades of investing. The thing is it really is real. And we don't want to have to overhype you. We want to hype you just enough that you keep coming and you get interested and you really take action that's going to put you into real estate. 3 words that absolutely, positively changed my life and I want to share with you. And it was a question I learned to ask myself, and it goes just like this. Why not me? Somebody's going to make money in real estate. Why not me? Somebody's going to own a mortgage company. Why not me? Somebody is going to have, you know, a great family life and whatever. Why not me? Why not me? It's getting your belief system to the point where you're willing to act on the things, act and take action towards your dreams. So that's all my little hype right there. But I think it's so important when you walk out of a place like this, you've got the energy, you've got reasons to believe. I'd really love to see many of you continue to step forward and take the action that's going to take you to where you want to go in life.
The one of the things I will say is that we're not saying to you that you should only come to our seminars. In fact, we don't pretend to know it all. We go to a lot of seminars. People go, you guys can know a lot about real estate. Well, it's like, well, we keep coming to all these seminars. But it's also that we go out and hear the other speakers. Go out and real estate investing is like a smorgasbord. You don't have to eat everything. In fact, you know what happens to people that do. So instead, pick the things that appeal to you. If something sounded good today, it resonated with you, awesome. If something you weren't too sure about, someone else, you know, told you, no, you got to go into cash flow marketplaces, not equity. Well, have that debate. Talk with your investment partners. Talk with your spouse. See what works for you, because everything in real estate works. That's the challenge with it. The question is, equity is going to happen. That's for sure. That's a given. The question is, will it happen to you? Because as we've said, 20 years from now, it'll be 20 years from now, whether you do anything about it or not.